A few words about our budget as I begin to look at the situation for next year, and as we go through what they call a mid-year budget. We go through the new budget is due April 15th. Jay Goldstone, who's our Chief Operations Officer and our Chief Financial Officer, is here to help explain this to you. The position I'm going to take with regard to anything, but especially with the budget as mayor, we're not going to be Pollyanna. We're not going to say the roof is falling, or we're not going to cry wolf, but we are going to try to be honest about the budget. And because the citizens of San Diego have to know our clear position. And the story so far has that we have been left with a balanced budget as Mayor Sanders finished his term. I think the mayor has done an incredible job over the last 7 years. He did get us to close to a balanced budget. He gave us a bond rating so we can talk about moving forward. But there are some problems in the budget that I want to make clear and to the citizens of San Diego that we have. And so we are honest about this, and people's expectations are clear, are based on fact. And we have some potential problems that had been noted by Mayor Sanders and in the reports that Jay Goldstone was responsible for. The independent budget analyst has pointed out. But they are potential, I've called them, I'm not sure what they call them, landmines or time bombs. But there are several things that can go off in the next month or two that will severely or critically alter the budget projections. One is what the state rules on our so-called our redevelopment funds and how they're going to be used in the wake of the abolition of CCDC. The Department of Finance makes final rulings on what expenditures can be essentially accepted by CCDC or the successor to CCDC, and which cannot, and some of which must be accepted then by the city of San Diego. For example, we have about a $14 million annual payment on the bonds for Petco Park. That was shifted to the CCDC budget. It apparently is going to come back to us. And Jay and the previous mayor had built in some protection for that, but not enough. But that's just almost a tip of the thing. There may be other expenditures that are shifted to the city budget from CCDC, which we have to figure out what to do with. Some of these are projects that can be halted. Some may be stuff that we can't. But in any case, there is a potential landmine there. In addition, as we shift to the voter-mandated Proposition B, there are costs, even while Proposition B is being litigated, costs we have to assume Proposition B is law. The CSRS, the city employee retirement system, has got to take that into account. They are estimating right now that an additional $27 million will be required in their projections and the way they calculate things, because there won't be any new people coming into that system, and their projections therefore change. And they're looking at right now a $27 million hit for next year. The rates of return, of course, vary on our investment funds every year. We have an assumption of 7.5% return. It looks like we'll be less than 1% in the current year. So when you shift that 7% to the reality of 1%, you have additional costs and additional payments. So our annual payment, for example, to the pension system was figured at $231 million for last year. It may go as high as $276, and that some of which was built into the budget, but most of which was not. So we have potential things. There is a third area which I am trying to work on with Sacramento and with the governor, where we voted in Proposition A in addition to Proposition B in June. Proposition A essentially bans project labor agreements for city projects. Well, the state had previously passed a law which said no state funds for cities which banned project labor agreements. And in the face of that, the voters did vote for Prop A. It's unclear how that is going to be enforced. I'm in discussions with Sacramento. It probably will affect not the operating budget, the general fund budget per se, but it'll affect our ability to do sewer and water projects, for example. But we're unclear on the impact of that. And the city is in potentially legal case, but we're trying to get the governor to take a sort of a pragmatic approach to that decision there. So what I have done here for you is this: the blue line was the scenario that the Mayor Sanders had left with, projecting almost a $5 million surplus next year, and then increasing in the couple years out. If the worst case scenario works out in terms of Prop A, Prop B, and the redevelopment funds, this is our potential situation. That is, we go from a $5 million surplus to a $37 million deficit, which can continue into the next year, and less, but still continue. So the worst case scenario, and I want people to understand, this is the worst case down here. This is, we'll call it a rosy scenario up here. Hopefully we're not going to get there. We don't know the outcome of many of these things. There still has to be, the CSRS board has to decide how they're going to approach things. The state has to decide how they're going to deal with things. We know that there's that the rate of return is less, but this is the potential, and it's something we're going to have to deal with. But I want people to be, we're going to be honest about all this stuff. We're going to be transparent. We're going to have to make adjustments as we figure out if this is going to be the real scenario. Probably, if you do a worst case and a best case, it's somewhere in between. But we hope it doesn't get to this point. But I wanted people to understand what we're starting the new year with, and where we're going to, how we're going to. We don't know how we're going to deal with it yet. There's some decisions that will be made very quickly in Sacramento, mainly, to tell us what these are going to be. But as soon as we know what those are, we will tell you, and we will make adjustments to our budget. Jay, do you want to add anything to this, or just be here for questions?
Just I'm available for questions.
Anything I left out that?
No, I think you covered it very well.
Thank you.
Do you have an idea of how you would like to deal with it?
Well, I hope this doesn't occur. But you know, we're going to have the professionals look at it. We have there are certain decisions have been made with regard to, say, our reserve funds, with regard to our liability fund, with regard to dealing with a couple windfalls we had from SDG&E and from the county. Those are all decisions that can be made, and shifts in what our priorities are. I mean, we're going to have to look at that. That's what I said in the recent campaign, that we're going to look at different priorities. Money that had been going, say, to transient occupancy tax could be, changed in terms of where they're going to go. Now, all these depend on the council, obviously. They depend on laws and policies that have already been passed. But we're going to have to take, these numbers to the citizens and the council and say, we need some changes here. So we're going into Christmas with optimism still. We'll deal with this after. I know, from leaving Congress just a few weeks ago, there are real concerns about the fiscal cliff and what impact that will have on our general economy. I'm less worried about that than I am this. As I've been a member of Congress for 20 years. Congress is dumb, but it's not stupid. That is, they will not go over the fiscal cliff. There will not be the sequestration that has worried so many San Diegans in terms of our defense contracts and our budget. They will, on December 31st at 11 o'clock p.m. Come up with a decision that will spare us those worst aspects. I mean, the worst case scenario that they're working with in Congress is a 2% drop in GDP. They're not going to let that happen for our nation. So I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about what the state does in redevelopment and what our retirement system looks like, more than the so-called fiscal cliff. I think we can rest easy on that one, frankly. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, regarding the fiscal cliff back there and the stupid, the Congress is not going to be stupid. However, the president is requesting that Congress come up with a large number of cuts that's going to happen. How is that going to affect San Diego?
Well, I don't think disproportionately to anywhere else. I just don't think that the sequestration, which required 50% of all cuts, be from the defense industry, and that's what was worrying mainly San Diegan leaders. And I think they should also have been worried more equally about the cuts, say, to the National Institutes of Health and the grants that gets to San Diego. But that sequestration is not going to happen, in my opinion. Therefore, the cuts are going to be, I'll say, reasonable cuts. They're not going to be these draconian things. And frankly, whenever their cuts are made in defense, San Diego makes out better than virtually every other community. When we had the BRAC process and base closings, I mean, they all consolidated to San Diego. We lost, the Naval Training Center, but we had so many more additions that we made out very well on that. So I'm not particularly worried about the budget situation at the national level. They will be, they're figured into most people's projections. The reasonable ones are the ones that have been forecast. It's the sequestration and the drastic cuts that people feared, and I just don't think they're going to happen.
The 1% rate of return for SIRS sounds extraordinary. Is that extraordinary?
Well, I'll let Jay. I don't think so, in that they go up and down. I mean, the year before we had 24. So that was extraordinary high. This is low. Have they been lower than this, Jay? I think they have.
Well, they have, and as we've seen in recent years, about 60% or 70% of their portfolio is in the market, international and domestic stock markets, and we've seen a lot of volatility there. The 7.5% assumed return is over a long duration, 20, 30 years. So any given year, it will be low, like it is this year, maybe even negative. In other years, it's going to be positive.
There are sometimes debate over whether that should be anywhere from 4% to 7.75%. So that debate is over say a 30-year period.
Correct, and I suspect that debate will continue, and it's not isolated to San Diego. That's a nationwide debate. GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Boards, are looking at maybe changing from a reporting standpoint, modifying those assumptions. But again, the history, at least with SD-SIRS, is that they've exceeded the 7.5% over the long run. And they were at 8% about 2 years ago, and I believe then they went down to 7.75%, and now currently at 7.5%.
And Bob, did you give a dollar figure associated with that rate of return and what it means for the budget?
I think I'm sorry, I didn't. It's $8 million that we had was not built in. And, I think that rate of return assumption is a little high, but that the board has to decide that. And the thing that I am trying to do with regard, as you know, Dave and others, the annual payment and our deficit is based on projections and assumptions. For example, they assume a 4% salary increase every year. Now, if we negotiate a 5-year employee no pensionable pay increase, which I promised and I'm going to try to do, that saves money right there because the projections become, quote, reality, and you can build in that reality for 5 years, so you lose that 20% thing right off the bat. So our debt, it goes down dramatically just because your assumptions you're changing your projection assumptions. So we're going to have to live with this and figure out and, rely on Jay and his people to give us some ideas, but we're going to have new priorities also.
If I may just add one clarity.
Sure, please.
On that $8 million and the $27 million number, that's a citywide number. So about 77% hits the general fund. So the 77% of those numbers is what gets reflected in this chart, and then the balance gets picked up by enterprise funds and the rest of the city.
Thank you, Jay. Please.
You had 2 press conferences with Commitment to Public Safety and allocating the SDG&E windfall and then another lawsuit. So is that going to go back into the equation, or are you still committed to giving that money to police?
No, I would like to see that money go to police and fire. Those both those two things. I was very careful to do this. San Diego Gas and Electric and the county were one-time infusions, and I thought they should go to one-time expenditures, capital investments in our police and fire. And I will continue to press for that. Obviously, we have to build if this comes true, we have to then make other assumptions. But I'm going to try to convince the council right away to take that $8 million from the county. We have to get started on that police communication system. The faster we get started, the more safe we are. So I'm still committed to that. And that has not been built in the budget at all, by the way. We just got that. I don't think that's anywhere in there. So it's out of there, so I'm going to spend it here.
Specifically, when you say a lot of this is contingent on conversations that's happening in Sacramento, what does that mean?
Well, just for example, let me give you two. The decisions on the proposition, I'm sorry, on redevelopment has come back down from the Department of Finance. We didn't agree with their assumptions. There's back and forth discussions. Eventually, there might be a suit on it. I don't think that suit has taken place yet, is it?
That's correct.
So there's give and take in they have say they found 20 areas in where we couldn't pay. Well, we're arguing over each one of those, and eventually that may go to court. The one that we see as being the most not only the biggest impact, but it is not as challengeable, is that $14 million Petco payment. So that's the biggest hit that we see coming in the short run. But the others are all negotiable and subject to suit, and who knows how they will turn out. But the worst case is built into this red line. And there was no. Also, this Prop A situation. We have not had any word from Sacramento. I'm in discussions with the governor's staff about how that should be interpreted and implemented, certainly in the short run. The city attorney wanted to sue already. I thought that we should have time see if there's some pragmatic way that they could interpret. There's different ways. We're a charter city versus non-charter cities. There's some leeway there. How that apply? Where that's going to apply? Does it hit these so-called loan revolving funds, or it hits our general fund budget? All that is negotiable, and we're trying to do that. And they're going to make decisions at the beginning of January. So I'm in discussions now on that one. We don't expect that to hit the general fund, but it's going to hit the city in terms of funds for our water and sewer and maybe road improvements. So it's a problem, and we're just trying to see if we can get it just applies to us, I think, in the state, as far as I could tell. So their implementation of it has never been done, and I'm trying to get them to implement in a way that the Democratic governor and the Democratic legislature will help out a Democratic mayor.
So the governor has power alone to interpret that legislation?
Not alone, but both the legislature and the governor's office. But it's mainly the way the governor will implement that. It's mainly coming from the executive branch. I mean, the law was passed, and he has to figure out how to implement it.
And you say that the city attorney wanted to sue.
No,
has the city council?
No, there's been no decision on that suit. The city attorney believes, and I agree with him in theory, that there is a very large issue about whether the state has the ability to impose that law on charter cities, and that's worth disputing. I hope I asked the city attorney to give me some time to see if we can come to a more pragmatic solution, so we don't get into all the legal stuff and everybody takes polarized positions and then they make findings against us. And I want to see if we can more pragmatically work that out.
Is it his feeling that negotiations won't be fruitful?
I don't know. I mean, he's giving. We're giving. The council and the current attorney have given me some time to try to deal with that before they make a decision on a suit.
So all these numbers and charter cities is so beyond my scope, to be honest. For the guy at home who's going to watch my broadcast tonight, what does that mean?
What I'm trying to say is that the expectations of a balanced budget, which would allow us then to make some gains in certain services that have been lost over the last 5 years, may not be realized. I don't want expectations to be too high based on the previous statements of a balanced budget. Therefore, library hours and and rec center hours and potholes will be filled at a faster rate. We have to be realistic about the expectations that the city has about our budget, and that's the sole purpose today. I hope it doesn't get to this. I hope it stays closer to that, but I don't want people to have expectations that may be too high based on the fact, we've gotten out of our problems in a budget way. We still have not gotten out of those problems. I think that's
back to shuttering shortening library hours and rec centers and not being able to fill potholes.
It's not come to that yet. It's not come to that.
Do you think it'll come to further cutting those, or just holding off on building them back up?
I hope not. I mean, I hope it doesn't come. I'm just wanting to sort of dampen expectations that everything has been fixed and everything is okay, and now we're just going to move forward. It's a little bit more complicated than that. We're hoping for the best, but we got to prepare for that worst situation.
How did we get to such a huge discrepancy?
Well, the difference is, the three things that I mentioned: the pension system and the redevelopment. And the rate of return. I mean, they do their best. I mean, the last figures that came out officially from the previous administration was a 5-year outlook. I mean, you're just making projections based on the knowledge you have now.
The projections have changed that drastically.
Well, the CSRS board came. I mean, I talked yesterday. I had a briefing, and they now think that the hit on the general fund will be $27 million. That was not programmed before, and that's based on. In fact, that's in addition to the low rate of return, because they have to calculate what moving the people that new people will not go into their retirement system. That changes the projections for how much money has to be put in to meet the debt, because there's no new money coming in. All new money is stopped. So now we have to make up for that in the projections. And they're just going to come out, I think, officially on that in a few weeks. But we were just warned on this yesterday, and I wanted to make sure people understood that there was a major problem that's potential here.
Last Friday, there was going to be a news conference regarding something about city travel, and it was canceled in the wake of the Newtown, Connecticut shooting. Do you have anything to announce on that today?
Let me just say a word about that. By the way, what I would like to do in news conferences is to once every couple of weeks or so, have it very open. So I was going to start off that one with an announcement, and then just open it up to whatever people wanted to talk about, to sort of have a more informal and give and take. On the travel, I have looked at some of the stories that some of you all have printed about travel in different agencies, where there has been some what shall I say, not a proper respect for the use of public funds. And I looked at our policy, which is very weak. We have not had any problems, as far as I know, with city travel. I mean, there is a cap on a per diem and some protections there that Jay can tell you more about. But it looks to me not to be the strongest policy. So what I'm going to ask, or I'm going to impose, is a 60 or 90-day moratorium on city employee travel until we revise and strengthen that policy. There will be exceptions. I mean, there's some travel in regard to, for example, our collective bargaining requirements. Some travel has already probably been paid for, and somebody can argue that, if I take this $500 trip, I'm going to save the city $10 million. You don't want to be stupid about it. So we have a waiver built in that we'll be able to approve. But I just want to stop things that are going on right now. There's various things that have have occurred, I mean, are occurring in a big city, whether it's contracting, it's travel, it's hiring, that may be based on different policies than I want to pursue, and yet they're still proceeding. So I just want to say, stop, let's take a breath, let's look at the old policies and say, I don't want to be blindsided by a travel story, to put it bluntly, like has been appearing about various agencies. And I'm going to ask all the other agencies to maybe let's get together and have a common travel policy. I don't know if that can happen. You know, you have all these housing commission, the port authority, you know, the airport, the county. I mean, but I would like to see a common policy. So we're going to take 60 or 90 days to try to develop that. There has to be a far more respect for the public dollar than I've seen when employees travel.
Is that something you've already implemented?
Or we will be sending out a directive. Did we send that out? It's already gone out. I'm sorry.
Is there anything specific to the travel policy that you find particularly weak?
Well, it's the reporting requirements are weak. There's no requirement in many cases for receipts, just as one example. There's no, I don't know if there's a requirement for a report on what was benefit to the city was made by this trip. I know, from my travel as a congressman, what kind of reports I had to do. I had to get prior approval from the ethics committee. I had to put in all receipts for everything. I had to make a report afterward. There was an oversight committee. I just don't see that going on anywhere in our. I just don't know. In fact, I just wanted to take a break, take a breath, and say, let us stop the travel. I don't want our city to be seen as disrespectful of the public funds, and I'm not taking a position travel is not important or not necessary in a lot of situations. I just want to make sure that there's a deep respect for the taxpayer dollar that is spent, and I just don't see that. It's not part of the policy, by the way. There's no preamble that says, if I am a city employee, I will deeply respect the public dollar and not have a stake that. Well, let's not. I just want to make that. I want to respect the necessity for trips, whether they're for professional development, whether they're for negotiations, whether they're for whatever. But say we have to be much stronger on our accountability for that.
Bob, two really quick follow-up questions on Prop A. Well, I just want to make sure, did you say that the City Council has not specifically authorized legal action?
Yes, I said that.
Okay. And also, you're facing a January 1 deadline to work something out?
No, it's not a deadline. We just expect decisions. Decisions will be may start taking effect then. And I don't know that they have the deadline in Sacramento, but it's we got to settle this by the beginning of the year, yeah. Or
My question is about the
but the impact wouldn't be felt for months or months or months after that anyway. So
the revolving loan applications that the city has into the state, what happens on January 1?
Well, I don't know. That's what we're trying to negotiate. I would hope that they could be accepted, and we'll see. I don't know yet, but those are threatened.
Is there an anticipation of time then when you'll have a clearer idea?
On Prop A?
Well,
I mean?
Just in general.
Oh, well, each one is different. That's the problem. And each one is a dynamic picture. And this is the best that we could do right now. I mean, everything could change overnight if something happens. But, we hope to have decisions on the, we hope to negotiate Prop A by the beginning of the year. We're going to decide on the redevelopment based on, I think, in this week or next week.
In the next couple of weeks.
Next couple of weeks, the finance department of the state will make their final decisions, and then we got to decide whether we're going to do a legal challenge of that. And on CSRS, it's Prop B is still in the courts. Who knows when that will be finally decided, and the CSRS board is going to make decisions of how based on some of that court stuff, what do they want to implement now? What can they wait on, etc. So it's a constantly moving situation. I was just trying to show that this is what we think right now is the worst case versus the best case. One last question.
Points related to more broad points. First off, you mentioned some city reports that had projected some of these possible deficits. Were these things that you saw coming? And second question is, you on the campaign trail, you were very excited about planning, public safety, et cetera. Could some of your priorities change if deficits come
Well, I mean, obviously, the budget is the constraint on all policies, or the budget is help. I hope my priorities would not change. I mean, it depends on how deep this deficit may or may not be. As I said, it depends on changing some of the priorities existing now. I think if you read the report of the 5-year plan, most of this stuff was stated in there. It was just not quantified and built into the final picture. I appreciate what the independent budget analysts did for who works for the city council, who pointed these out in much more graphic detail. And but she had all her figures from Jay. So Jay knew all this. It wasn't built into the, what shall I say, the public understanding of the problems. And that's what I wanted to really bring out today, that this stuff was known, and not to the degree it was, because all this is they're all moving pieces, and so we don't know finally. Thank you all very much. Appreciate, and we'll look forward to regular sort of just without fixed topics that you want to explore. Thank you.